I said, Nikolai, stop. You've known me since I was a baby. You're my mother's oldest friend. This is wrong. He said, I have waited 21 years for you to stop being a child, Amara. Your mother gave me her friendship, but I am taking her daughter's heart. I am 50 years old. I don't have time to play games. You are coming to my bed tonight, or I am coming to yours. If you're here for the danger and the passion, subscribe and like this video right now. Question for you. Would you fake an engagement with a Russian mobster to save your family? Type "do it" or "run" below. All right, let's get into the story. I should tell you that I never meant to go to Moscow. That city was supposed to be a postcard in my mother's drawer, a name she said with too much weight, too much history I wasn't supposed to understand. But my brother Marcus disappeared into debt the way water disappears into sand. Slowly. Then all at once. Then you're standing in a desert wondering when everything dried up. The call came on a Tuesday. A voice thick with an accent I'd only heard in movies told me Marcus owed $200,000 to people who didn't forgive debt. The voice told me I had 72 hours to come to Moscow, or they'd send Marcus back to Chicago in pieces. I remember my hands shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone. I remember thinking about calling the police, the FBI, someone official who could fix this with paperwork and procedure. But the voice had known my mother's maiden name, my address, the coffee shop where I worked every morning at 6. They knew everything, and they were waiting. So I went. I maxed out my credit card for a one-way ticket and told my mother I'd gotten an internship. She believed me because I'd always been the good daughter, the one with scholarships and plans, the one who didn't disappear into bad decisions like Marcus did. I packed a suitcase with clothes too light for Russian winter and flew into a country where I didn't speak the language or understand the rules. Moscow in January is a different kind of cold. It doesn't just touch your skin. It crawls inside your chest and makes a home there. The airport was all harsh fluorescent lights and Cyrillic letters that looked like broken English, and I stood there with my thin coat and my American ignorance, waiting for someone to claim me like lost luggage. He came in black. That's what I remember first. A black SUV with windows so dark they looked painted, pulling up to the curb where I stood shivering. Two men got out, shoulders like linebackers, faces like they'd forgotten how to smile, and one of them said my name like a question and a statement at once. I nodded. What else could I do? They took my suitcase and opened the back door, and I climbed into leather seats that smelled like expensive cologne and something sharper underneath. Danger, maybe. Or just the particular scent of men who didn't ask permission for anything. The drive through Moscow was a blur of golden domes and gray Soviet buildings, snow piled along streets that seemed too wide, too empty. One of the men, the one riding shotgun, turned around and studied me with eyes the color of dirty ice. He said something in Russian I didn't understand. The driver laughed. I felt my stomach tighten with the understanding that I was completely, utterly alone. The mansion appeared like something out of a fever dream. Iron gates that could have kept out an army, a driveway lined with snow-covered trees, a house that wasn't a house but a statement, white stone and dark windows and columns that belonged in a museum. They led me inside to a foyer with marble floors so polished I could see my reflection, distorted and small. Wait here, one of them said in English that came out careful and hard. I waited. The house was silent in a way that felt deliberate, like even the air knew better than to make noise. I counted the paintings on the walls, 7, and tried not to think about Marcus, about what they might have already done to him, about whether coming here had been the stupidest decision of my life or the only one I could have made. Then I heard footsteps, measured, unhurried, the sound of a man who had never rushed for anything because everything waited for him. Alexei Volkov walked into that foyer like he owned not just the house but the very concept of ownership. Tall, taller than the men who'd brought me, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples and a face that was all sharp angles and cold assessment. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my college tuition, and his eyes were the kind of blue that look through you rather than at you. He stopped 3 feet away and studied me the way an art dealer studies a painting. They're not sure is worth the investment. Amara. He said my name with a Russian accent that made it sound like someone else's name, something more dangerous than my mother had intended when she'd named me. You look like your mother. That's when I understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't just about Marcus's debt. This was something older, something that had roots I couldn't see. Where is my brother? My voice came out stronger than I felt, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, approval maybe, or amusement. Your brother is alive. For now. He moved closer, and I caught his scent. Something expensive and woody with cigarette smoke underneath. He owes me money. More importantly, he owes me respect. He tried to steal from me. Thought I wouldn't notice because he's American, because he's far from home. His English was perfect, barely touched by accent except in the way he shaped certain words, making them sound harder than they were meant to be. I noticed. I'll pay you back, however long it takes. $200,000. He said it casually, like discussing the weather. How long would it take you, barista with a sociology degree? 10 years? 20? The fact that he knew what I studied, where I worked, made my skin feel too tight. What do you want? A question I appreciate. Americans are so direct. Russians, we dance around things, we use metaphor. He moved to a side table, poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. He held one out to me. Vodka, real vodka, not the paint thinner you drink in America. Take it. I took it because refusing felt more dangerous than accepting. The glass was heavy, expensive. The vodka inside looked like water, but smelled like fire. Your brother's debt is forgiven, Alexei said, and I felt my heart leap before he continued. If you agree to do something for me. What? But I already knew it would be something impossible, something that would cost more than money. I need a fiancé. He said it like he was discussing a business merger. 6 months. You will live in my house, attend events at my side, convince certain people that I am a man settling down and becoming respectable. He smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. You will be convincing or your brother dies anyway, and perhaps I will visit your mother in Chicago, explain to her how both her children disappointed me. The vodka glass was cold in my hand. Why me? Because you're American. Because you're beautiful. Because you have no connection to my world and therefore no one will suspect the truth. He raised his glass. Because I own your brother's life and now I own yours. Za vaše zdrowie. He drank. I drank. The vodka burned down my throat like swallowing a lit match, and when I could breathe again, I said the only thing I could say. When do we start? His smile widened just slightly. We already have. They gave me a room that was bigger than my entire apartment in Chicago. A bed with posts like trees, windows that looked out over Moscow's lights, a bathroom with marble and gold fixtures that belonged in a palace. A woman appeared, older, round-faced, with eyes that had seen too much, and brought me clothes. Dresses and heels and things made of silk and cashmere, all in my size, all in colors that made my dark skin look like it was lit from within. I didn't ask how they knew my measurements. I was learning not to ask questions I didn't want answered. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window watching snow fall on a city that felt like another planet. And I thought about Marcus in whatever hole they were keeping him in, and I thought about my mother, who believed I was pursuing opportunity instead of selling myself to save my idiot brother. And I thought about the man downstairs who had bought me like property with a smile that never reached his eyes. I didn't cry. Crying felt like giving them something else to own. Morning came gray and cold. A knock on my door, then the same older woman. Irina, she told me her name was Irina, bringing tea and bread and telling me in broken English that I had 30 minutes before Alexei expected me downstairs. I dressed in black pants and a cream sweater that felt like wearing a cloud, and I went down to find him in a room lined with books in languages I couldn't read. He looked up from papers he was reading, and for a moment I saw him really look at me. Not assessing, not calculating, just looking, before the coldness returned. We begin today. You will learn certain things. How to move in my world, how to speak when necessary and be silent when required, how to make people believe that you chose this. And if I can't, then you will learn anyway. He stood, buttoned his jacket with movements so practiced they looked like choreography. Come, we start with breakfast. Breakfast was caviar and blinis and more foods I didn't recognize, served by staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Alexei explained the rules while I tried to eat without revealing how out of my depth I was. I would call him by his first name in public. I would wear the ring he would give me. I would smile when appropriate and touch his arm and let him touch me. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that crossed certain lines, but enough to sell the illusion. I would attend dinners and parties and meetings where dangerous men made dangerous decisions, and I would be beautiful and quiet and exactly what they expected a trophy to be. And what do I get? I asked. Besides my brother's life, protection, money, and education in how the world really works. He leaned back, studying me. And perhaps if you're clever, you learn enough to never be powerless again. That afternoon, he took me shopping. Not the kind of shopping I knew, Target runs and clearance racks, but boutiques where they knew his name and brought champagne I didn't drink and held up dresses that cost more than cars. He sat in a chair and watched me try on clothes like he was directing a movie, saying yes or no with small movements of his hand, occasionally standing to adjust how something fell on my shoulders or to tell them to bring it in a different color. His hands were warm when they touched me, and I hated that I noticed. We left with bags and boxes and the strange feeling that I'd been turned into someone else's doll. That night was my first dinner with his world. A restaurant with no name on the door, just a number. And inside it was all dark wood and darker corners and men with eyes that tracked movement like predators. Alexei introduced me with his hand on my lower back, possessive claiming, and I shook hands with men whose names sounded like weapons and smiled until my face hurt. They spoke Russian mostly, but occasionally switched to English for my benefit, asking polite questions about America, about how I met Alexei, about when the wedding would be. I'd memorized the story he'd fed me: a charity event in New York, love at first sight, a whirlwind romance. And I told it with enough detail to be believable and enough hesitation to seem shy. They seemed to believe me, or at least they pretended to. But there was one man who didn't pretend. Victor. He was younger than the others, with a scar that ran from his eye to his jaw and a smile that made me want to shower. He watched me all night with an intensity that made my skin crawl, and when Alexei went to speak with someone across the room, Victor leaned close and said in perfect English, "You're very pretty for a lie." I looked at him directly. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. Alexei Volkov doesn't fall in love, he acquires. He strategizes. He controls." Victor's smile widened. "So the question is, what is he controlling with you?" Before I could answer, Alexei was back, his hand on my shoulder, his voice dropping into something cold and hard as he spoke rapid Russian to Victor. Whatever he said made Victor lean back, raise his hands and surrender, laugh like it was all a joke. But his eyes stayed on me, and I understood that I'd just made an enemy I didn't know how to fight. In the car ride home, Alexei was silent until we were almost to the mansion. Then, "Victor is dangerous. Stay away from him." He approached me. "I know, but stay away anyway. He looks at you and he sees weakness. An American girl playing dress up in a world she doesn't understand." He turned to look at me, and in the dim light of passing street lamps, his face was all shadows. Prove him wrong. The days blurred together after that. Mornings with Irina teaching me Russian phrases, basic things, greetings and thank yous, and how to politely decline vodka without offending anyone. Afternoons being fitted for more clothes, learning how to walk in heels that could double as weapons, memorizing the names and faces of people in Alexei's circle. Evenings at dinners or clubs or private parties where I played the role of devoted fiancé while men discussed business I wasn't supposed to understand. But I did understand, or I started to. Alexei's world wasn't just rich men with expensive tastes. It was power traded like currency, violence implied in every conversation, a whole economy built on fear and loyalty, and the careful balance between them. He ran it all with the same cold efficiency he ran everything else, delegating, deciding, occasionally demonstrating what happened when someone forgot their place. I saw him hurt a man once. We were at a warehouse, why, I still don't know, and someone had failed to deliver something important. Alexei didn't yell, he just walked up to the man, said something quiet in Russian, and then broke his hand with a tire iron he picked up like an afterthought. The sound was awful. The man's scream was worse. Alexei handed the tire iron to one of his men and walked back to me, his expression unchanged, and said we should go. We had dinner reservations. I threw up in the car. He didn't comment, just handed me his handkerchief and told the driver to stop at a pharmacy for water. "You're not used to this," he said while I rinsed my mouth. "No one should be used to that." "Perhaps, but this is my world and you're in it now." He looked at me with something that might have been sympathy if he were capable of it. You can be horrified, Amara, but don't be weak. I wanted to hate him, should have hated him, but there were moments, brief, unexpected, when the coldness cracked, and I saw something underneath. Like when Arena's daughter was sick and he quietly paid all her medical bills. Or when a young man came to him for help with a family problem and Alexei spent an hour listening, then made phone calls that solved it. Or late at night when he thought I was asleep and I'd hear him playing piano in a room downstairs, something sad and Russian that made the house feel less like a prison. 3 weeks in, he gave me the ring, an emerald the color of deep water surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum that felt heavy on my finger. We were in his office and he slid it across the desk like a contract. It was my grandmother's, he said, which shocked me more than anything else he could have said. I can't, you will. It tells a story. That this is real. That I value you enough to give you something meaningful. He paused. And perhaps I do. I stared at him. You don't even know me. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you haven't cried once since you arrived. I know you learn quickly and you watch everything and you're smart enough to be afraid, but brave enough not to show it. He stood, came around the desk, took my hand and slid the ring onto my finger himself. His hands were warm, gentle in a way that didn't match anything else about him. I know you're wasted serving coffee in Chicago. Maybe I liked my life. Did you? He still held my hand, thumb brushing over the ring. Or were you just surviving, waiting for permission to want more? I pulled my hand away because his touch was doing something to my pulse I didn't want to examine. I should go, early morning tomorrow. Amara. I stopped at the door. You're doing well, better than I expected. Shouldn't have mattered, it shouldn't have made warmth spread through my chest. But it did. The next night was the ballet. Alexei explained that certain people would be there, important people. People who needed to see us together, see that he was becoming the kind of man who enjoyed culture instead of just controlling it. I wore emerald green to match the ring, a dress that made me feel like a different person, and Alexei wore a tuxedo that should have been illegal. The ballet was at the Bolshoi, and walking in on his arm felt like entering a different century. Gold everywhere, red velvet, chandeliers that dripped crystal light. People stared, at him, at me, at us together. I heard whispers in Russian I was starting to understand. Beautiful, unexpected, American, temporary. Our box was private, velvet chairs close together, and when the lights dimmed and the music started, Alexei leaned close and translated the story for me in a low voice that seemed to vibrate through my whole body. Swan Lake, love and betrayal, and transformation. Of course. Intermission came and we walked the halls, stopping to talk with people who smiled with too many teeth and asked questions that felt like tests. An older woman with diamonds at her throat and ice in her eyes looked me up and down and said something in Russian that made several people laugh. Alexei's hand tightened on my waist. He responded in Russian, his voice pleasant but with an edge underneath that made the laughter stop. The woman's smile froze. He guided me away before I could ask what had been said. What did she say? It doesn't matter. Tell me. We were in an empty corridor, just us and the sound of the crowd in the distance. He turned to face me fully. She said you're pretty for a temporary distraction. She implied that I would tire of you quickly, that American women don't understand Russian men, that you were... He stopped. That I was what? His jaw tightened. She used a word that has no polite translation. So I told her that you are my future wife, that she would treat you with respect or find herself uninvited from every important event in Moscow, and that if she spoke about you again, I would make sure her husband's business dealings came under very close scrutiny. He paused. Then I suggested she apologize to you directly. I was stunned. Not by the old woman's cruelty, I'd expected that, but by his defense of me. Fierce, immediate, real. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You're mine to protect now. He said it simply, like stating a fact, and something in my chest did a complicated twist. The second half of the ballet I barely watched. I was too aware of him beside me, his arm resting on the back of my chair, occasionally leaning close to explain something, his cologne mixing with the scent of old wood and expensive perfume. Once his hand brushed my shoulder and I felt it like electricity. This was dangerous. This was so much more dangerous than the violence or the criminals or the lies. This was me starting to feel something I had no business feeling. After, there was a reception. More champagne I didn't drink, more conversations I navigated carefully, more of his hand on my back like a brand. Victor was there, watching us from across the room with that same unnerving intensity. And when our eyes met, he raised his glass in a mocking toast. Alexei noticed. His whole body went rigid. "Stay here," he said. And before I could respond, he was crossing the room toward Victor with a purpose that made people step aside. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could see it. Alexei speaking low and hard, Victor's smirk faltering. The way other men suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, and then Alexei was walking back to me like nothing had happened. "We're leaving," he said. In the car, I finally asked, "What is his problem with me? With you?" Victor thinks I'm getting soft. Settling down, getting married, these are things weak men do. He sees you as proof that I'm losing my edge. Alexei looked out the window at Moscow sliding past. He's wrong, but he'll keep testing it until I prove otherwise. How do you prove otherwise? He turned to look at me, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. That's a question you don't want answered. But I did want it answered. That was the problem. I wanted to understand this world, understand him, understand why I was starting to care about the opinion of a man who had bought my cooperation with my brother's life. We got home late. The house was dark except for low lights that cast everything in amber. Alexei walked me to my door like we were on an actual date, and we stood there in the hallway with too much silence between us. "Thank you," I said, "for tonight, for defending me. I defend what's mine." But his voice was softer than usual. "I'm not really yours." "Aren't you?" He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne mixed with something that was just him. "You wear my ring. You live in my house. You stand at my side, and you make people believe that you chose me. At what point does the performance become real?" My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "It can't be real. This is business, a transaction." "Yes, that's what I tell myself, too." His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheeks so gently it almost hurt. "But I've never been a good liar, Amara. Not to myself." He kissed me. Or I kissed him. Or we both moved at once and met in the middle. It didn't matter. What mattered was his mouth on mine, his hand sliding into my hair, the way I rose onto my toes to get closer, the sound he made low in his throat when I gripped his jacket. What mattered was that it felt like falling and flying at once, like every single defense I'd built was crumbling, like I was making a catastrophic mistake, and I didn't care. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "This complicates things." "Yes." "We should stop." "Yes." Neither of us moved. His thumb traced my bottom lip, and I watched his eyes darken. Then he stepped back, putting space between us like it physically pained him. "Good night, Amara. Good night." I went into my room and closed the door and leaned against it, my fingers touching my lips where I could still feel him. This was impossible. This was insane. This was going to destroy me. I couldn't wait for more. The next 2 weeks were torture. We didn't talk about the kiss, but it hung between us like smoke, changing everything. He looked at me differently now, longer, hungrier, like he was always on the edge of reaching for me. I caught myself watching him constantly, memorizing the way he moved, the sound of his laugh when something genuinely amused him, the lines around his eyes that appeared when he smiled for real instead of for show. We had more events. A dinner with a politician who wanted Alexei's support, a private party at a dacha outside Moscow where snow fell like stars and vodka flowed like water, a meeting in his office where I was supposed to just sit quietly but ended up asking a question that solved a problem, and Alexei looked at me like I'd just done something miraculous. "You're intelligent," he said after everyone else had left. "You sound surprised." "Not surprised. Impressed." He poured vodka, handed me a glass. "I've been treating you like an accessory. I should have been treating you like a partner." "I'm not your partner. I'm your prisoner who's dressed nicely." "Are you?" He moved closer. "Because you could have run by now. Could have gone to the embassy, found a way out, but you're still here." Because of Marcus? Your brother is safe. Has been for 2 weeks. I released him a days after you arrived. He said it casually, like it wasn't earth-shattering. I told him to go back to America, forget his debts, forget Moscow. He left. The room tilted. What? You're not here for him anymore, Amara. You're here because you chose to stay. I wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, wanted to demand why he hadn't told me, why he'd let me believe I was trapped. But underneath the anger was something worse, the realization that he was right. I had known, on some level, had felt the shift from captive to willing participant, had stopped thinking about escape and started thinking about tomorrow. You're cruel, I said. Yes, but I'm also honest. You're free to leave whenever you want, but you won't. He moved closer until we were inches apart. Because you're curious now about this world, about me, about who you could become here. I hate you. No, you don't. You wish you did. His hand cupped my face. Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you want to leave and I'll drive you to the airport myself. But don't lie to either of us about what's happening here. I should have told him to stop. Should have walked out, gotten on a plane, gone back to my safe, small life. Instead, I kissed him again, harder this time, with all the anger and want and confusion tangled together, and he kissed me back like he was drowning and I was air. We ended up against his desk, his hands in my hair, mine pulling at his shirt, everything that had been building between us finally breaking free. He lifted me onto the desk, stepped between my legs, and the sound I made when his mouth found my neck was desperate and raw. Alexei, say it again. His voice was rough, accent thicker. Say my name. Alexei. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes was so intense it almost frightened me. Want, need, something deeper that I didn't have a name for. I should take you upstairs, he said, to a bed, not a desk like you're some quick transaction. I don't care where. A knock, loud, urgent. We both froze. Alexei swore in Russian, helped me off the desk, smoothed my hair with fingers that shook slightly. Come in. It was Dmitri, one of his most trusted men, and his face was pale. He spoke rapid Russian, and I watched Alexei's expression change from frustrated to cold to something that looked like fury. What? I asked. What is it? Victor. Alexei's voice was ice. He took someone, a girl from one of our clubs. Left a message that he wants to talk, wants to renegotiate certain arrangements. He looked at me. He's forcing my hand. What does that mean? It means I have to go handle something I didn't want you to see. He grabbed his coat. Stay here. Don't leave the house. Dmitri, double the guards. I'm coming with you. No. If this is about me, about him thinking you're weak because of me, then I should be there. Amara, I'm not a decoration, remember? You said partner. I stood up, straightened my dress. So let me be one. He studied me for a long moment, something like pride flickering in his eyes. You'll stay in the car, you'll do exactly what I say, understand? Yes. The drive to wherever we were going was tense and silent. Alexei made phone calls in Russian, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it, giving orders that sounded like someone signing death warrants. We pulled up to what looked like an abandoned factory, and there were already cars there, men with guns, the kind of scene that belonged in a movie. Except the cold was real, and the danger was real, and I was really here. Stay, Alexei told me, then to Dmitri. She doesn't leave the car. If anything happens to me, you get her out first, promise me. Dmitri nodded. Alexei looked at me once more, something complicated passing over his face, and then he was gone, walking into that building with his men, and I was left waiting in the cold dark, wondering if I'd just watched him walk to his death. Minutes stretched. I counted my heartbeats, watched the building like I could see through walls if I just looked hard enough, started running through scenarios in my head, all of them bad, all of them ending with violence, all of them gunshots, 3 of them, sharp and clear in the night air. My heart stopped. Dmitri swore, reached for his gun. More shots. Then silence that felt like the world holding its breath. The door burst open and Alexei came out, dragging a girl who couldn't have been more than 19, crying and wrapped in his coat. Behind him, his men. No Victor. No sign of anyone else. He put the girl in another car, gave orders, then came to ours, slid into the back seat beside me. There was blood on his hands. Not his blood, I checked, couldn't help myself. Ran my hands over him, looking for wounds. I'm fine, he said quietly. What happened? Victor won't be a problem anymore. He said it flatly, and I understood what that meant, what those gunshots had been. The girl is safe. She'll be taken care of. We drove home in silence. His hand found mine in the dark, fingers lacing together, and I felt the dried blood on his skin, and I didn't pull away. Inside the house, he went straight to his room. I should have gone to mine, should have let the night end there, processed what I'd just witnessed, what I was becoming part of. Instead, I followed him. He was at the bathroom sink, washing blood off his hands, and he looked up when I appeared in the doorway. You shouldn't be here. I know. I just killed a man, Amara. Killed him because he challenged me, because he threatened what's mine, because in my world, that's how things are resolved. His voice was rough. You should be horrified, should be running. I know. I moved closer. But I'm not. He turned to face me fully, water dripping from his hands. What are you doing? I don't know. I took a breath. I think I stopped pretending somewhere along the way. Stopped acting like this was temporary, like I was just surviving until I could escape. I think I started actually caring about you, about this world, about who I am when I'm with you. I'm a bad man, Amara. I hurt people. I break rules. I take what I want and I don't apologize. I know. I was right in front of him now, but you also protect people. You solve problems. You gave me freedom and I chose to stay. You made me feel powerful when I've spent my whole life feeling invisible. My hand touched his chest, feeling his heartbeat. So maybe you're a bad man, but maybe I don't care about good anymore. He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. He walked me backward to his bed. Our bed, I thought wildly, because I knew I wasn't leaving this room tonight or any night after. His hands were gentle despite everything, like I was something precious, like he was afraid I'd break or disappear. Tell me you want this, he said against my mouth. Tell me this is real. It's real. I want this. I want you. What happened next was everything. His hands learning my body, my fingers mapping his scars, the way he said my name like a prayer, the way I fell apart under his touch and didn't feel afraid. It was passion and tenderness, and a kind of belonging I hadn't known I was missing. After, wrapped in his arms with Moscow sleeping outside the windows, he whispered against my hair. I bought your cooperation with a lie, made you think you had no choice. But somewhere in all this pretending, I fell in love with you. Really in love. Not performing, not strategizing, and I don't know what to do with that. I turned to look at him. This man who was both monster and protector, who had broken me open and showed me a version of myself I never knew existed. You could start by believing I fell in love with you too. His eyes searched mine. Even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are, I kissed him softly. Because you're also who you are with me. And that man, I want to keep him. He held me tighter, and I felt something release in him, some last defense crumbling. 6 months was the deal, but I'm keeping you forever, Amara. If you'll stay. I'll stay. We fell asleep tangled together, and I should have been afraid of the future, of what loving a man like Alexei meant, of how complicated everything had become. But all I felt was certainty. This was where I belonged. I woke up to Moscow winter light filtering through curtains I hadn't closed and the realization that the bed beside me was empty. Cold sheets where Alexei had been, just the indent of his body and the scent of him lingering on the pillow. For a moment, panic seized me. Had last night been a mistake? Had he regretted it? Was I about to discover that vulnerability was just another weapon in his arsenal? But then I saw the note on his pillow, his handwriting sharp and precise. Business. Back by noon. Stay. That single word. Stay. Like he knew I might run, might wake up and realize what I'd done, and flee back to a life that made sense. But I didn't want sense anymore. I wanted this. The dangerous, complicated, impossible thing we were building. I showered in his bathroom, used his soap that smelled like cedar and smoke, wrapped myself in his robe that hung to my knees. Irina found me in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee and clucked her tongue, shooed me away, made me sit while she prepared breakfast. She studied me with those knowing eyes, saw something in my face that made her smile, soft and sad at once. You love him, she said in careful English. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows what love looks like on a woman's face. She set tea in front of me, black bread with butter and jam. Alexei Dmitrievich is a hard man. His father was harder. His grandfather hardest of all. The Volkov men, they are ice and iron. She paused. But his grandmother, she was fire. She taught him that strength and softness can live in the same heart. You remind me of her. I'm nothing like. You are exactly like. She was from Georgia. Came here not speaking Russian, not understanding our ways, but she learned. She adapted. She became more Volkov than the Volkovs. Irina's eyes were distant, remembering. And she made his grandfather human. You do the same for Alexei. I wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the history I'd stepped into, but my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered carefully. Amara. My mother's voice and my heart stopped. Baby, where are you? Marcus came home 3 weeks ago saying you were in Moscow, that you'd helped him with something, but you haven't called? You haven't. Mama. Guilt crashed over me. I'd been so consumed with survival, with Alexei, with becoming someone new that I'd barely thought about home. I'm okay. I'm sorry I didn't call. What are you doing there? Marcus won't tell me anything, just gets quiet when I ask. Did something happen? Are you in trouble? How did I explain this? How did I tell my mother that her daughter had fallen in love with a Russian mobster, that I was living in his house, wearing his ring, choosing this life voluntarily? No trouble, I met someone. I'm staying a while longer. Silence, then. Amar Jackson? You've never stayed anywhere for anyone. Who is he? His name is Alexei. He's. What was he? How did I describe him without lying, but without telling the whole truth? He's complicated, but he's good to me. Good to you how? Baby, you don't sound like yourself. Maybe I'm finally becoming myself. The words surprised me, but they felt true. I know it sounds crazy. It is crazy, but I'm happy, Mama. Really happy. Another long pause. You're being safe? You're being smart? As safe and smart as I can be. Then I trust you. But Amara, if you need me, if something goes wrong, you call. You hear me? I will get on a plane. I will come get you. I know. I love you. I love you too, baby. Even when you're being cryptic and worrying me half to death. After we hung up, I sat there feeling the weight of the life I'd left behind, pressing against the life I was choosing. My mother's voice, her worry, her love. It was an anchor to who I used to be, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be tethered anymore. Alexei came home at exactly noon, shedding coat and tension as he entered, his eyes finding me immediately. Relief flickered across his face like he'd half expected me to be gone. He crossed to me, pulled me up from the couch, kissed me hard and deep. I thought you might run, he said against my mouth. I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. What stopped you? The fact that I'd just spent the rest of my life wondering what if. I pulled back to look at him. My mother called. His expression shifted, careful. What did you tell her? That I met someone, that I'm staying. Not everything, but enough. And she wants me to be happy. So she's choosing to trust me. I traced the line of his jaw. Even though I'm pretty sure she knows I'm lying about something. He was quiet for a moment, then. Bring her here. What? Your mother. Bring her to Moscow, let her meet me. See how you live. Understand that you're choosing this with clear eyes. He caught my hand, pressed it to his chest. I won't hide what I am, but I'll show her that I'll protect you with my life. That you're not just some temporary thing I'll discard. The offer stunned me. That's Alexei, she'll know. She'll see your world and she'll know exactly what you are. Good. Then she'll know you're not naive. That you understand what you've chosen and you chose it anyway. His thumb brushed my wrist. And perhaps it will make you feel less divided between there and here, between who you were and who you're becoming. Why would you do that? Because you called her, even though it was hard. Because you love her and you don't want to hurt her. Because I'm asking you to build a life with me. And that means bringing your whole life into it, not just the parts that fit easily. I kissed him again, overwhelmed by the gesture, by this man who could be brutal and tender in the same breath. Thank you. That afternoon, we went to his office building in the city, all glass and steel, legitimate business fronts hiding less legitimate operations beneath. He had meetings, and I sat in on some of them, learning the language of his world. Import export that wasn't always what it claimed. Real estate deals with men who sweated when Alexei looked at them. A politician who came seeking favor and left, having promised more than he intended. Watching Alexei work was its own kind of education. He never raised his voice, never threatened overtly, but power rolled off him in waves. People bent to his will like it was gravity, and occasionally he'd glance at me, include me in a decision, ask my opinion on something, and I'd see the men around us recalculate what I was to him. After in the car, I asked, "Do they know that we started as fake?" "They know I claimed you. That's all that matters in this world. How we began is irrelevant to how we continue." "And how are we continuing?" He took my hand, turned the emerald ring on my finger. "I told you 6 months, but I'm making it permanent. Will you marry me, Amara? Really marry me, and not for show or strategy or to solve a problem? Marry me because we choose each other." My heart was a bird trying to escape my chest. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious about anything." His eyes held mine. "I know it's fast. I know it's insane. But time moves differently in my world. You live years and months, decades and weeks. And I know what I want. I want you, beside me, part of this life, my partner, my wife, my equal. I'm not your equal, not in your world. You're more than my equal. You have something I'll never have, the ability to walk away, to choose something different, to live without this weight." He brought my hand to his lips. "And yet you stay. That makes you braver than any man in my organization." I should have asked for time, should have been practical, cautious, smart. But I'd stopped being that person the moment I got on a plane to Moscow. "Yes, I'll marry you, really marry you." His smile was like sunrise, rare and transformative. He pulled me into his lap in the back of the car, kissed me like we had all the time in the world and simultaneously like time was running out. And when we finally broke apart, the driver was studiously pretending to see nothing. We planned the wedding for 3 months out. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered. My mother would come and Marcus if he dared show his face. Alexei's inner circle, the men he trusted with his life. A priest who asked no questions. A reception at the mansion with vodka and traditional Russian food and probably illegal amounts of everything. But first he told me there was something I needed to understand. He took me to a private shooting range the next day, put a gun in my hands, a Glock 19, he said. Good balance, easy to handle, and taught me how to shoot. His body behind mine, hands guiding my grip, voice low and steady in my ear explaining sight alignment and trigger control. The first shot made me jump. The 10th made a neat hole in the center of the target. "Why am I learning this?" I asked. "Because you're mine to protect, but I won't always be there because this world has enemies and they will see you as weakness because I need you to survive if something happens to me." He turned me to face him. Because power isn't just knowing how to fight, it's others knowing you can. Over the next weeks, I learned more than shooting. Self-defense from a woman who trained Spetsnaz soldiers and didn't pull her punches. Basic Russian expanded to conversational fluency through immersion and Arena's patient tutoring. The financial structure of Alexei's empire, where the money really came from, how it was cleaned and moved and invested. The hierarchy of the Bratva, who could be trusted and who would sell us out for the right price. How to read a room for threats. How to walk away from danger without looking like prey. I was becoming someone new. Or maybe I was becoming who I'd always been underneath the safe, small life I'd built. My mother arrived on a Tuesday, and I met her at the airport with my stomach in knots. She came through customs looking tired and suspicious, her eyes finding me immediately, taking in my expensive coat and new confidence, and the ring on my finger that caught light like a declaration. "Baby," she hugged me tight. "You look different." "I am different." Should I be worried? Probably, but don't be. The drive to the mansion was tense. She watched Moscow slide past with the eyes of someone looking for danger. And when we pulled through those iron gates, I saw her straighten, saw her register exactly how wealthy Alexei was, how serious this all was. He met us at the door, and I watched my mother take him in. The height, the expensive suit, the way he moved like someone used to being obeyed. But also the way he looked at me, the softness that entered his eyes when they landed on my face. Mrs. Jackson. He extended his hand, his English perfect. I'm honored to meet you. I'd say the same, but I don't know enough about you to be honored yet. My mother's handshake was firm, testing. My daughter says she's happy. I'm here to make sure that's true. And if it's not, then I'm taking her home and you're not going to stop me. Alexei's mouth quirked into something like a smile. I see where Amara gets her strength. Please come in. We have much to discuss. That first dinner was an interrogation disguised as a meal. My mother asked pointed questions about how we met. We'd prepared a story, a business conference, a conversation that lasted hours, a connection neither of us expected. What Alexei did for a living, he was surprisingly honest. Import-export with investments in real estate and hospitality. And yes, some of it existed in gray areas of the law. What his intentions were toward me. Marriage, partnership, a life built together. Whether he understood what it meant to love a black woman in a country not known for its diversity. He'd thought about it extensively, would protect me fiercely, and anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with him personally. She watched him as he talked, watched me watching him, and I saw her start to understand. This wasn't some whirlwind fling. This was real, deep, complicated, and undeniable. You love him, she said later that night when it was just us in the guest room. Yes. And he loves you? Yes. But there's something you're not telling me about how this really started, about what his business really is. She took my hands. Baby, I'm not stupid. I see the guards, the way people defer to him, the kind of money that buys this kind of life. Your brother came home scared and wouldn't talk about Moscow. Now, you're here, engaged to a man you've known for 6 weeks, telling me you're happy while looking over your shoulder. I wanted to lie and wanted to protect her from the truth. But she deserved honesty. Marcus got into debt with dangerous people. I came here to help him. Alexei was one of those people. He made me a deal. I'd pretend to be his fiancé for 6 months. He'd forgive the debt. Her face went pale. Amara. But then it became real. I fell in love with him, Mama. Really in love. And he fell in love with me. And yes, he's dangerous. Yes, his world is violent and complicated. But he's also good to me. He protects me. He sees me as an equal. He's given me more freedom and power than I ever had being safe in Chicago. Freedom? Her voice rose. You call this freedom? You're trapped in a deal with a criminal. I was always trapped, Mama. Trapped by being invisible, by playing small, by thinking safe was the same as happy. I held her gaze. Marcus was released weeks ago. I could leave any time, but I don't want to. This is where I choose to be. She was quiet for a long time, tears in her eyes. When did my careful girl become so reckless? Maybe I was always reckless. I just never had permission to be. The next morning, my mother asked to speak with Alexei alone. They disappeared into his office for over an hour, and I paced the hallway wondering what she was saying, what he was promising, whether she was going to demand I come home. When they emerged, my mother looked tired but resigned, and Alexei looked like he'd just survived combat. What did you... I started. I told him if he ever hurts you, I will find a way to hurt him worse. My mother's voice was steel. I told him I don't care how powerful he is, how many men he has, how untouchable he thinks he is. You're my daughter, and no one gets to harm you and walk away. And I told her I'd expect nothing less, Alexei added, and that if I ever do hurt you, Amara, I'd hand her the weapon myself. My mother stayed for a week, and I watched her slowly warm to Alexei, slowly see what I saw, the complexity, the contradiction, the man who could order death with one breath and discuss literature with the next. She saw how he was with me, the quiet care, the way he listened, the manner in which he'd restructured his entire world to make space for mine. The night before she left, she held me close and whispered, "Be careful, baby. Be happy. You deserve happy, even if it looks different than I imagined." After she flew home, Alexei found me staring out at the Moscow night. She approves? He asked. She worries. But yes, I think she approves. I leaned into him. Thank you for letting her see the truth. Or most of it. She's your mother. She has a right to know what you've chosen. His arms circled me. And what you've chosen includes this. He handed me a folder. Inside were documents, financial statements, legal papers. What is this? Your freedom. Accounts in your name, enough money that if you ever need to leave, you can. Property deeded to you alone. Passports and documentation if you need to disappear. He turned me to face him. I meant it when I said you're not trapped. This proves it. You can walk away, Amara, anytime. I won't stop you, won't follow you, won't punish you for going, but I hope you stay. I looked at the papers, at this man who was giving me the power to destroy him by leaving. Why would you do this? Because love without choice isn't love. It's possession. And I don't want to possess you. I want you to choose me every single day. I set the folder aside and kissed him. I choose you. Today and tomorrow, and every day after. The wedding preparations continued. But underneath the planning, the dress, the flowers, the guest list, I felt something shifting. Noticed men at meetings watching Alexei differently. Caught snippets of Russian conversation that stopped when I entered rooms. Saw Dmitri's face go tight when he thought I wasn't looking. Something was wrong. I found Alexei in his office late one night, surrounded by papers and looking older than I'd ever seen him. Tell me what's happening. It's nothing. Don't lie to me, we're past that. I moved closer. Something's wrong, I can feel it. He was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. There's been talk. Some of the old guard think I'm weak, that getting married is making me soft. They see you as a distraction, a liability. He met my eyes. They're wrong, but they're also powerful, and they're testing me. How? Small things. Shipments going missing. Deals falling through. Challenges to my authority that wouldn't have happened 6 months ago. He stood, paced to the window. Victor's death should have ended this. Should have proved that I'm still the man I've always been. But instead it seems to have emboldened certain factions. Who? Yuri Volkov. My uncle. The word was bitter. He thinks the position should have gone to him when my father died. He's been waiting for an opportunity to take it. What does he want? Everything. Power, territory, control. And he wants me gone, dead or deposed, doesn't matter which. Alexei turned back to me. I can handle Yuri. I've been preparing for this since I took over, but Amara, if this turns into war, you need to be somewhere safe. Away from Moscow, away from... No. I was across the room before I'd decided to move. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. You'd be a target. I'm already a target. They see me as your weakness? Good. Let them underestimate me. But I'm not running. He pulled me close, and I felt him trembling slightly. Fear, I realized. Not for himself, but for me. I couldn't survive losing you. Then don't lose me. Teach me how to fight this. Make me part of the strategy, not something to hide away. I looked up at him. You said partner. So let me be one. The next weeks were preparation for war. Alexei pulled his most trusted men closer, sent his least trusted away with tasks that would reveal their loyalty. We moved the wedding up. If we were going to face this, we'd face it united, legally bound, unbreakable. And I trained harder, learned more, became fluent in the language of violence and power. Yuri made his move 3 days before the wedding. It started with an explosion at one of Alexei's warehouses. No one killed, but the message was clear. I can reach you. I can hurt you. I can destroy what you've built. Then a meeting was called. The kind of meeting that decided leadership, where all the Pakan and Vor gathered to discuss the future of the organization. Alexei went armed and alert, and I went with him despite every protest. The meeting was in a restaurant Alexei owned, cleared of regular customers, filled instead with dangerous men in expensive suits. Yuri was already there when we arrived, older than Alexei by 20 years, with a face like weathered stone and eyes that calculated constantly. Nephew. His voice was a rasp of cigarettes and vodka. And the American. How charming that you bring your pet to business. My fiancée, Alexei corrected coldly. And if you disrespect her again, uncle, this conversation ends differently than you'd like. Yuri laughed, but there was no humor in it. The boy threatens me. Over a woman. This is exactly what I'm talking about, brothers. Look at him, distracted, emotional, weak. Is this who should lead us? A man who puts pussy before power? I felt Alexei tense beside me, but before he could, I stepped forward. You think loving someone makes him weak? I spoke in Russian, carefully pronounced, and I saw surprise flicker across multiple faces. You think caring about another human being is a liability? Then you misunderstand power completely. The American speaks. Yuri's smile was cruel. Please enlighten us. What does a barista from Chicago know about power? I know that a man afraid of emotion is a man afraid of himself. I know that Alexei is strong enough to love and lead at once. While you're so terrified of vulnerability, you've built your entire identity around being hard. I moved closer to Yuri, conscious of Alexei's men tensing, of the risk I was taking. I know that he has loyalty because he earns it, while you have fear because you demand it. And when it comes to a fight, I know which army I'd rather have. The room was silent. Yuri's face had gone red, and I knew I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He lunged, and suddenly there were guns everywhere, men shouting in Russian, Alexei pulling me behind him, Dmitri and others forming a wall between us and Yuri's faction. Enough! Alexei's voice cut through the chaos. You want to challenge me, uncle? Then do it properly. Not with bombs and insults and political maneuvering. Call the vote. Let the Brotherhood decide. Yuri straightened, adjusted his jacket. You want to vote? Fine, we vote tonight. Leadership of the Moscow Bratva, Alexei Dmitrievich Volkov, or Yuri Maximovich Volkov, all in favor of the nephew who's lost his way to foreign pussy? Hands went up. I counted. 11 out of 23. All in favor of a real leader? A man who understands our traditions? More hands. 12. My heart sank. But then Dmitri spoke. There is a third option, is there not? In the old days when votes were too close, when the path was unclear? Yuri's eyes narrowed. You're not suggesting a test, not of strength, but of loyalty. Each leader gathers his men, completes a task set by neutral parties, proves his worth through action rather than words. Dmitri looked around the room. Is this not the old way? The way our fathers decided? Murmurs of agreement. Yuri couldn't refuse without looking weak. Fine. What task? An older man, someone Alexei had said was neutral in this conflict, spoke up. The Lebedev shipment. It arrives tomorrow night, $1 million in American dollars worth of product. Whichever of you can secure it and deliver it safely proves they can lead us forward. It was a test of everything. Planning, force, loyalty, intelligence. A miniature war played out in a single night. Agreed, Alexei said. Agreed, Yuri echoed, but his smile was predatory. He thought he'd already won. We left the restaurant in tense silence, security tight around us. In the car, Alexei finally turned to me. That was reckless, dangerous, unbelievably stupid. He paused. And the bravest thing I've ever seen. You faced down Yuri like you weren't terrified. I was terrified. I just didn't let it stop me. You called him out on his fear of emotion in front of everyone. You essentially said he was weak for not having what we have. Was I wrong? No, you were perfectly right, which is why he'll try to kill you now. Alexei pulled me close. I'm putting you somewhere safe tomorrow night. Somewhere he can't reach you. No, I'm coming with you. Amara, you need everyone you trust, and I'm someone you trust. I can help. I've learned enough. I'm smart enough. You can get killed. His voice broke slightly. And I won't survive that, so please, just this once. Let me protect you by keeping you away from the fight. I wanted to argue more, wanted to insist on being there, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly as he held me. And I understood that this was the one thing I could give him, the safety of knowing I wasn't in the crossfire. Okay? But you come back to me, Alexei. You promise me you come back. I promise. The next day was preparation. Alexei and his men planning, strategizing, running through scenarios. I was moved to a safe house outside Moscow, a small dacha in the woods guarded by 4 of Alexei's most trusted, with instructions to shoot anyone who approached without the correct code word. The waiting was torture. I paced. Drank tea I couldn't taste. Watched the clock like I could slow time by staring at it. The guards got updates through encrypted messages, but they wouldn't share details, just told me to stay calm. It was proceeding as planned. Then the shooting started. Not at the shipment location. Here, at the safe house. The guards reacted instantly, pushing me into a basement room, locking the door from the outside. I heard them shouting in Russian, heard gunfire, heard something heavy hit the floor. Then silence. Footsteps on the stairs. Someone testing the door handle. Amara Jackson. Yuri's voice on the other side of the door. The American whore who thinks she understands Russian power. Come out, let's have a conversation. Go to hell. Such language. Your mother would be disappointed. He said it casually, like discussing the weather. Yes, I know about her. Sweet woman. Lives alone in Chicago, works at a hospital, volunteers at her church. Would be such a tragedy if something happened to her. My blood went cold. You touch her. And what? Your precious Alexei is busy securing a shipment that doesn't exist. It's a trap, little girl. Right now, my men are surrounding him and his loyal dogs, and in about a gunshot somewhere in the distance, muffled but clear. 10 minutes, he'll be dead. Then I take over and you become a problem I need to solve. So come out, make it easy. Or I make a phone call to Chicago and your mother learns exactly what happens to people who get in my way. I was shaking, trapped, armed. I had a gun Alexei had insisted I carry, but facing the door meant facing Yuri and whoever he'd brought. Not facing it meant my mother died. Some choices aren't really choices at all. I opened the door. Yuri stood there with 2 men, all armed, all smiling. Smart girl. Now, we're going to take a drive. You're going to call Alexei, tell him to stand down, tell him if he wants you alive, he surrenders. And maybe, if you're very lucky and very convincing, I'll let you both live. We were walking out to a car when the explosion happened. Not near us, far away, back toward Moscow, a bloom of fire and smoke rising into the night sky. Yuri's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. He looked at me with dawning horror. What did you do? I didn't do anything, but I'm guessing Alexei did. Because I knew him now, knew how he thought. The shipment was a trap, yes, but not for Alexei, for Yuri. And while Yuri had been so focused on eliminating his nephew, Alexei had been 3 steps ahead. More gunfire, closer now. Yuri's men looked nervous. Then, out of the darkness came Dmitri and half a dozen others, weapons raised, and Yuri understood he'd lost. On your knees, Dmitri ordered. All of you. They complied, because the alternative was death. I was shaking, adrenaline crashing through me, but I stayed upright, stayed strong. A car roared up and Alexei emerged, blood on his suit, murder in his eyes. He saw me, safe, unharmed, standing over his defeated uncle, and something in his expression cracked. He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulled me into his arms hard enough to hurt, and I felt him trembling. You're okay, he said against my hair. You're okay. I'm okay. Your trap worked. My trap almost got you killed. He went after you. I didn't think. He pulled back, cupped my face. I should have known he'd try for you. But you did know. That's why you had guards here. They died for me, Alexei. The reality of it hit me hard. They died so I could live. Yes. Because you're worth dying for. He turned to Yuri, his voice dropping into something lethal. You threatened her mother, broke every code we have by attacking someone under protection, by involving civilians. He pulled his gun and I knew what was coming. You taught me that traitors deserve no mercy. I learned that lesson well. Alexei, wait, Yuri started. You made your choice when you chose power over family, over honor, over everything we're supposed to value. Alexei's finger tightened on the trigger. See you in hell, uncle. The shot echoed across the empty countryside. Yuri fell, and the war was over. The cleanup took days. Bodies removed, stories coordinated. The Brotherhood gathered and told that Yuri had been dealt with, that Alexei's leadership was no longer in question. Some of Yuri's faction fled. Others bent the knee. A few made the mistake of continuing resistance and were handled quietly. Our wedding happened 3 days later, smaller than planned because the world was still settling, but beautiful anyway. I wore white lace and my grandmother's pearls, and Alexei wore a traditional Russian shirt under his suit jacket, and the priest married us in Russian and English both. My mother watched via video call, crying and smiling at once. Marcus had sent a gift but hadn't dared come. The Brotherhood attended, and this time when they looked at me, it was with respect tinged with fear. I'd proven I was more than a pretty face, more than a foreign distraction. I was the woman who'd challenged Yuri to his face, who'd survived his attack, who'd stood over his body without flinching. I was Alexi's partner in every sense, and they knew it. The reception was vodka and dancing and traditional songs that Irina taught me to sing along with, and when Alexei and I had our first dance as husband and wife, he held me close and whispered, "No more secrets. No more half-truths. You know everything now, the violence, the cost, the reality of this life. If you want to walk away, I'll honor the agreement I made. I'll let you go. I don't want to walk away. I want to build something new, something that keeps the strength of your world but adds mercy where we can, justice where possible, something that our children won't have to escape from." I looked up at him. Can we do that? We can try, together. The months that followed were transformation. Alexei began slowly shifting the organization, moving money into legitimate businesses, cutting ties with the worst of the criminal enterprises, building something that could eventually exist in daylight. It was dangerous work. People resisted. But with me at his side, with my perspective and his power, we pushed forward. I started a foundation for women escaping trafficking, using money from the very organizations that had exploited them. Helped Alexei find alternatives to violence when violence had always been the first option. Became fluent in Russian and learned the history of this country that was now my home. Built bridges between his world and mine, proving that power and compassion could coexist. We brought my mother over for Christmas, and she walked through Moscow bundled in furs, marveling at the architecture and the snow, and the way her daughter had become someone new while staying fundamentally herself. She and Irina became unlikely friends, two mothers who loved fiercely and worried constantly and understood each other without needing translation. Marcus visited once, shamefaced and apologetic, and Alexei was gracious enough not to mention the debt that started everything. They had an awkward dinner, and afterward Marcus told me, "You're really happy, aren't you? Even after everything." Especially after everything, I found who I was meant to be. By falling in love with a Russian mobster who could have killed you. By being brave enough to choose the complicated thing instead of the safe thing. A year after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. Alexei cried when I told him, actual tears sliding down his face while he held me, whispering promises in Russian about protection and love and the future we'd build for this child. He became impossibly more protective, more tender, hiring additional security and consulting with doctors and reading parenting books in 3 languages. Our daughter was born on a snowy March morning, tiny and perfect and ours. We named her Katerina Nadia, Russian and strong, but with American middle name options for when she was older and wanted choices. Holding her for the first time, seeing Alexei's face as he cradled her against his chest, I understood that we'd created something genuinely good out of all the darkness. My mother came for a month after the birth, helping with the baby, teaching Alexei how to change diapers with the same commanding tone she'd used when I was small. Watching them together, this dangerous man and my careful mother, united in their absolute devotion to Katerina, made me realize how far we'd all come. "She's beautiful," my mother said one night while we watched Alexei walk the baby to sleep, singing Russian lullabies in a voice gone soft. "And you're happy. Really, truly happy." "I am." "Then I suppose getting on that plane to Moscow was the right choice after all." She squeezed my hand, even if it scared me half to death. The years unfolded in unexpected ways. Alexei gradually transformed his organization, and it wasn't easy. Some men left, some fought the changes, some had to be handled in ways I chose not to know the details about, but slowly, painfully, we built something different. Still powerful, still connected, but operating more in gray than in black. Legitimate businesses that actually were legitimate. Investments in communities instead of exploitation of them. A legacy that our daughter could inherit without shame. I became more than just Alexei's wife. The women in the organization, wives, daughters, girlfriends of powerful men, began coming to me, asking advice, seeking help, finding in me someone who understood being adjacent to power without being consumed by it. I started informal gatherings, created networks, built systems that protected the most vulnerable people in our world. Katerina grew into a force of nature, half Russian stubbornness, half American boldness, completely her own person. She learned both languages simultaneously, demanded stories about Chicago and Moscow, asked uncomfortable questions about what Papa did for work. We told her age appropriate truths, never wanting her to be naive, but also not wanting to steal her childhood. When she was 5, she asked if Papa was a bad man. Alexei looked at me, then at her, and said, I've done bad things. Hurt people who hurt others, made hard choices, lived in a world where violence is sometimes necessary, but I try every day to be good for you, for your mama, for the people who depend on me. Being a man isn't about being perfect. It's about trying to be better than you were yesterday. She thought about this seriously, then nodded. Okay, but if you do bad things again, I'll be very disappointed. Then I'll try very hard not to disappoint you, Malishka. Marcus got married eventually to a woman who knew nothing about Moscow or debts or the sister who'd saved his life. They visited once and it was awkward and healing at once. He apologized, really apologized, for putting me in danger, for being stupid, for the choices that had cascaded into everything that followed. I don't regret it, I told him. What happened, who I became, the life I built, I wouldn't change it. Even knowing what it cost, especially knowing what it cost, because I learned what I was capable of, what I was worth, who I could become when I stopped playing small. He hugged me tight. I'm glad you're happy, sis, even if the way you got here was terrifying. There were still hard days. Days when the violence of Alexei's world touched us too close, when threats emerged and had to be neutralized, when I saw him come home with blood on his hands and had to reconcile the man who killed with the man who sang lullabies, when Katerina asked questions I didn't know how to answer without lying or traumatizing her. But there were more good days. Days of simple family meals and teaching our daughter to ice skate on frozen ponds and watching Alexei build a business empire that could operate in daylight. Days of traveling between Moscow and Chicago, maintaining connections to both worlds, refusing to choose one identity over another. Days of waking up next to a man who still looked at me like I was miraculous, who still thanked me for choosing him, who still made me feel powerful and cherished at once. On our 5th anniversary, Alexei took me back to that restaurant where we'd had our first dinner. Same private room, same vodka, but everything else was different. 5 years, he said, raising his glass. 5 years since you walked into my world and turned everything upside down. 5 years since you trapped me with my brother's debt and I was stupid enough to fall in love with you anyway. Was it stupid? His eyes held mine. Falling in love with me? Completely stupid. Absolutely reckless. The worst decision I could have made. I smiled. And the best one, too. We drank, and the vodka still burned, but I'd learned to love the fire. I've been thinking, Alexei said carefully, about legacy, about what we leave behind for Katerina, for others who come after, about whether it's possible to fully step away from the darkness. And I think I want to try, really try, not just incrementally shift, but actually exit, build legitimate businesses, hand over the rest to people we trust, step back from the bratva entirely. He took my hand. Create a life where you and Katerina are never at risk because of my choices. Is that even possible? Can you just walk away? It will take time, years maybe. And it will be dangerous, the transition, the power vacuum, the people who won't want me to leave, but with you beside me, I think I can. He brought my hand to his lips. You made me believe I could be more than what I was raised to be, so let's prove it. The process took 3 years. 3 years of careful maneuvering, strategic retirements, power transfers, building up trusted men to take over territories and operations. 3 years of threats and attacks and late-night strategy sessions. 3 years of Alexei slowly dismantling the empire he'd built, keeping only what could exist legally, severing ties with the darkness. It nearly killed him twice. Once literally, when a faction opposed to his exit planted a bomb in his car that detonated early, and once figuratively, when he had to make a choice between his old world and his new one and chose us over power. But he survived. We survived. And finally, remarkably, we were free. We kept the Moscow house but spent more time in America, bought a place in Chicago near my mother, enrolled Katerina in school where she charmed everyone with her accent and her confidence. Alexei invested in tech companies and real estate and clean energy, becoming the kind of wealthy businessman who was boring instead of dangerous. But he never fully left Russia behind. Neither did I. We returned often, maintained friendships with the men who'd stood beside us, supported causes that mattered, kept our language and traditions alive. We were both things, Russian and American, dangerous and domesticated, who we'd been and who we'd become. Katerina grew into a teenager who asked hard questions and got honest answers. We told her everything eventually, how we met, what her father had been, the violence and the choices and the transformation. She was angry for a while, processing the reality that her parents' love story started with coercion and danger. But she saw how we were with each other, how we'd changed, how we'd built something genuinely good out of something that started so wrong. Would you do it differently? She asked one night. If you could go back. I looked at Alexei, at this man who'd been monster and savior at once, who'd given me freedom by trapping me first, who'd loved me into becoming someone I never knew I could be. No, I said honestly. I wouldn't change a single thing, because every choice, every risk, every terrifying moment led to this. Led to you. Led to a life I never imagined but can't imagine living without. Even the bad parts? Especially the bad parts. Because they taught me what I was capable of, that I was strong enough to survive anything, that love can transform even the darkest situations into something worth having. She seemed satisfied with that answer, or at least accepting of it. On our 10th anniversary, Alexei and I stood on a balcony overlooking Moscow at night, the city glittering with lights and snow, and he said, "Do you ever miss it? The danger, the intensity, the way everything felt heightened?" Sometimes. But then I remember that intensity came with a cost. People died. We were always looking over our shoulders. You came home with blood on your hands more nights than not. I leaned against him. This is better, quieter, safer, more sustainable. This is the life we earned. I love you, Amara Volkov, more than I loved power, more than I loved control, more than anything except our daughter. I love you too, even though you're a reformed criminal who trapped me with my idiot brother's debt. He's a doctor now, you know. Marcus sent me an invitation to some medical conference where he's speaking. Wants us to come. Will you? If you want to. I owe him in a way. His stupidity brought you to me. I laughed, and it echoed across the Moscow night. Then we'll go. Toast to bad decisions that turned into good lives. We went inside where Katerina was video calling with my mother, the two of them planning a trip to Chicago, and I watched my family, this impossible, beautiful family, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. This was my life now. Former barista from Chicago, wife of a reformed Bratva boss, mother to a Russian-American daughter who would probably rule the world someday, woman who'd been bought with a debt and stayed for love, woman who'd faced down criminals and learned to shoot and transformed an empire from the inside out. I'd come to Moscow scared and trapped and trying to save my brother. I'd stayed because I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for: power, purpose, partnership, passion. I'd become someone I never imagined becoming, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The story people tell about us isn't entirely true. They make it sound simple. American girl meets Russian mobster, falls in love, lives happily ever after. They leave out the complexity, the cost, the transformation it required from both of us. They forget that love isn't always gentle, that sometimes it's forged in fire and danger and impossible choices. But the ending they tell is true enough. We did get our happy ending. It just looked different than either of us expected when this started. Alexei found me later that night, pulled me close, and asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about that moment in the airport when I could have turned around, could have found another way, and could have chosen safety over risk. Thought about every dangerous decision that followed, every moment I could have run, every time I chose to stay. Not a single one, I said. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. He kissed me, soft and deep and full of promise. But we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Then we'd better not waste it. We didn't. And that's the story. That's how she fell for Moscow's most dangerous man and lived to tell the tale. If you loved this, smash that like button right now. Subscribe, because I'm dropping new romance stories weekly: Russian mafia, billionaire, enemies to lovers, all the forbidden love you crave. Tell me in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Should I write a sequel about Katerina when she grows up? What story should I do next? Italian mafia, biker romance, or CEO billionaire. Tag someone who needs to hear this story. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep believing in love that's worth fighting for.